Mr. Hookem for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Iran deal is dying before our eyes, and only Europe is still clinging on to this flawed plan. Lauded as a means of ensuring peace and security for generations, its only effects have been to potentially catalyse yet more death and destruction in the already unstable Middle East and to drive a wedge in Western diplomacy, as Trump actually follows through with his campaign pledges and ends US participation. The USA will be reimposing sanctions on Iran. It was also reported last week that the Iranian regime is looking at options to boost uranium enrichment in case the deal fails. So let's be clear, Iran is preparing for the failure of the nuclear deal. But what is the EU reaction to all this? The Commission is trying to force through a delegated act to make Iran eligible for European Investment Bank funding. Not content with clinging to a dying deal, you actually want to give economic and political support to the Iranian regime. It makes sense though, doesn't it? Trump pulls out of the nuclear deal and you see an opportunity to make the EU look like big players on the world stage. This is more about EU vanity than it is solving complicated political issues. It is almost as if the EU is trying to fight a proxy war against America in the Middle East. Our ability to influence Iran is greatly weakened without US participation. If the EU and Europe's major powers continue down this line, its only real impact will be to tilt backwards towards the anti-Americanism that seeps through the seams of these institutions. So how will this affect potential economic projects financed by the EIB? How will this influence the deteriorating trade and diplomatic relations between the EU and USA? According to Reuters' internal sources, the bank is unhappy with the Commission proposal because the bank raises funds on US markets. To make matters worse, a delegated act is a power the unelected Commission has to adopt legislation without anyone elected having a vote. So this proposal is far from being democratic and accountable. Whilst we will have, of course, continued to work closely with European allies when our interests converge, this is not one of those times. May's government is too scared to fully embrace the opportunities and independence that Brexit provides, and is continuing to follow EU policies and legislation, no matter the cost to the UK. Don't get me wrong, I don't want an independent Britain to be the 51st state of America, but the British people certainly voted to stop being the EU's 28th state. This is going to be one of the first big tests for the UK to refine its place in the world as an independent nation. The whole point of Brexit was to make our own democratic rules and pursue our own interests. But like the rest of the negotiations, Mrs May will surrender to the EU, following EU rules and policies as closely as possible, completely against the express will of the British people. The UK government, packed with Remainers, could not see the benefits of Brexit before the vote and is too scared to seize them now. This is not academia or domestic political squabble, but will have real and long-lasting effects on our standing in the world, driving a wedge between the UK and our most important strategic partner, the USA. We should not follow Mogherini's vanity project at the expense of our most important global relationship. It is time for us to follow our American allies and call it as we see it. The Iran deal is dead, and we must seek out a new style of diplomacy, one that actually gets results, as we are seeing on the Korean Peninsula.
Thank you. Thank you. No. Thank you.
Wait and see what happens in the aftermath of the USA pulling out of the nuclear deal before blundering into Iran. The Parliament has 2 months to object to this, and I would urge MEPs to do the same.